This is the Ride1Up Limited V2, and today I'm going to review it. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. First, we'll walk through all the components. These forks are cheap, heavy, and reliable. You can set the amount of power you get in every pedal assist level. Then we'll get into some first-person riding footage, talk about performance. 930 watts is what I'm seeing as the high. And finally, some third-person riding footage. I'll give you my concluding thoughts as well as some pros and cons. But first, let's take a closer look. The Limited holds a special place in my heart because Ride1Up was the first brand that was willing to work with me back in 2020, and the Limited was the first model I reviewed outside of our cargo electric bike. And here we are almost 4 years later and we're both still around, so I guess that's good news. The main selling points of this electric bike is that it is an affordable torque sensor electric bike, also set up for city riding. Now, just how affordable is it? Current price is $15.95, though you can find up-to-date pricing down in the description. And also, if you decide to pick up any Ride1Up electric bike, using our link helps supports the channel, costs you nothing. Thank you so much. One of the ways Ride1Up is able to get such great pricing is one, because they're a direct-to-consumer brand, but number two, and in particular with the Limited, is it takes a little bit more assembly. We're gonna talk about the fork in a second, but you'll need to install that. You'll need to install the cranks as well as the rear light. There's just a few extra steps. So if you're not a confident bike builder, you might want to save this one for your bike shop. And so the cost savings really comes into Ride1Up's ability to fit the Limited in a surprisingly small box, like 8 inches on the top and the side compared to other electric bikes of somewhat similar size. Now, speaking of size, this bike is offered in 2 different variations. The step through, as you see it here, otherwise there's the XR or the step over, a more traditional framed electric bike. The step through you see here is good for riders, according to Ride1Up, from 5'1" all the way up to 6'2", and the high step 5'6" up to 6'4". I want to talk a little bit more about that, but first, the bike weighs in at 55 pounds and it can hold 300 pounds. And the standover height on the step through is 23 inches. That's going to be the measurement right here, and 30 inches on the high step. I want to point out that this step through is a little bit taller than some step throughs, so an important consideration. I'm 6 feet tall and I do need to raise my leg up quite a bit. You could also tilt the frame. That's going to make it a little bit easier. Now on the bike, I can get full leg extension, no problem. I do feel like I'm towering over the bike a little bit. So personally, I would probably choose the XR. Alternatively, I could have put an adjustable stem here, maybe bring these handlebars out and up a little bit for a better riding position, which brings me to my next topic that I want to talk about, and that's going to be the handlebars, because that differs depending on the model you choose. So on the high step, you'll get more traditional, straighter handlebars, but on the step through, something I really like that Ride1Up typically does is you get swept back handlebars, and as you'll see in the third person riding footage, that puts me in a nice upright riding position, which is what a lot of people prefer, so it's nice you have the choice with Ride1Up. And if you don't like the white that you see here, it's offered in a few different colors. Let's dive into the components. First up, we have Tektro hydraulic disc brakes with 180mm rotors, plenty of stopping power. That front wheel is attached with a quick release. And as Ride1Up likes to do, you get nicer name brand tires that you don't often see. These are the WTB Groove E tires, 27.5 by 2.4 inches wide, street tread. The Limited V2 is now outfitted with a name brand SR Suntour XCM 32 front suspension fork. It is a coil suspension fork. They used to include an unbranded air fork on the Limited, decided to go with a name brand coil suspension fork now. I could go either way on that decision, especially more recently as one of my favorite YouTubers released a video about these SR Suntour forks. I'll put a link to that video down in the description, but his conclusion is that these forks are cheap, heavy, and reliable. There's a preload adjustment knob on the left and a lockout on the right. We'll open that back up so I can show you what you can expect. So this suspension fork is going to be perfect if you do decide to take it off-road, say some trails like this one here in Florida. Up front is a 60 lux integrated front headlight, very bright. And new on the Limited V2 is a light that is built right into the fender. It is not brake actuated though. And you now get these sturdy metal fenders in the front. And of course, nice coverage in the rear as well. They've done an excellent job with the cable management. Ride1Up's badge in the front. Note that there's no mounting points here for a front basket. In the cockpit, we have locking ergonomic rubber grips on the left and right, a left-hand thumb throttle, Tektro hydraulic disc brake levers. And just to note, there are no motor cutoffs, so hitting the brakes is not going to cut power to the motor, something to be mindful of. On the right is a Shimano 8-speed trigger shifter. This is the one that I prefer in this price range, and Ride1Up's display that they have been using for a long time. On this display, you have wattage on the left, current speed front and center, battery capacity, I changed it to the percentage in the advanced settings, odometer in the bottom left, pedal assist, 0 all the way up to 5, and trip in the bottom right. Hitting the power button will change the settings over to max speed, average speed, time, and back to odometer. And there are some really nice advanced settings in this display that's fairly easy to use. Holding pedal assist up and down will get you into that. Let's select display setting. So you can reset the trip here, but perhaps more importantly, you can set the speed limit, and it just allows you to change it between class 2 and class 3. I really like that more brands are allowing you to do this. This is where I changed the state of charge view to %. There's also a sensitivity setting. Over to the advanced settings. This is something that I really appreciate. In power set, you can change the number of pedal assist levels, say 0 to 9, 1 to 9, 0 to 3, whatever you want to do. Let's leave it at 0 to 5, but what's cool is if I hit the power button here, you can set the amount of power you get in every pedal assist level. So it goes from 14 to 23, 35, 50, and finally 100. Now what's great about this, say you're a newer rider, you can turn the power down in some of the lower pedal assist levels, or maybe you want the power to go higher, quicker. It's up to you. Just something nice that Ride1Up includes. There's also a setting for slow start, change the brightness of the display, as well as set a password. So that is the tried and true Ride1Up display. They've been using it for years. Moving on to the battery, instead of top load like it was previously, it's now on the bottom. So just a little bit trickier to put in and take out. I'll turn the key to the right, heard a little click, and there's a lever, so I can drop the battery down now. Now technically on the battery it says 46.8 volts, 13.6 amp hours. On Ride1Up's website, they advertise it as a 48 volt, 14 amp hour battery. That's about the average size we see on electric bikes at this price point. You can charge it here if you want removing the battery. There's a light indicator here to give you an idea of the current capacity, and the port is the same whether you're charging it on or off the bike right here with the rubber cover. We'll put the battery back. This end goes first. And I almost forgot, the battery is UL2271 certified. We'll snap it into place. This video is sponsored by my shop at shop.ebikeescape.com, where you can pick up some high quality e-bike accessories. We have my favorite one here. This is the best water bottle cage on the market because it allows you to carry large water bottles like this one. Simply rotate, you can remove it. And of course, 2 water bottle cage bosses here. So make sure that you're staying hydrated while you're riding your electric bike by picking up this awesome accessory. Put it back in and clamp into place. Wellgo metal pedals on this electric bike. Of course, it's using a torque sensor. Talk about that more in the first-person riding footage. Burly kickstand located towards the rear. No chances of the pedals coming in contact with it. Tektro hydraulic disc brake in the rear. There is a torque arm here that helps keep your wheel where it's supposed to be. And yes, if you want to, you can add a rear rack. Ride1Up sells one, but there's also mounts right here if you want to pick up your own. They've included this Velo saddle, pretty firm. That's a personal preference, of course. In the rear, we have a 750 watt sustained motor gearing. Again, 8 speeds instead of the traditional 7. 12 to 32 teeth, and it is a cassette. Another torque arm over here, and they are using Shimano Altus as a derailleur. Very common component we see on many electric bikes. They do have a chainstay protector in case you do decide to take this bike off-road. Cables running along the right side here, and yes, class 2 750 watt sticker on the seat tube. And we have a 48 tooth front chainring, single-sided, and it is metal. But more importantly, how does this bike perform after nearly 4 years since its original release? Let's get into some first-person riding footage. All right, let's get into the first-person riding footage on the Ride1Up Limited. A few things to talk about. I did not change any of the power levels in the various pedal assist levels. That's something you can customize. I left them as stock. We'll put a picture on the screen of what those looked like. I did, however, go and change this from class 2 to class 3 mode so we can see just how powerful it is. Another thing to call out is in pedal assist level 0, you still have access to the throttle. That can differ depending on the electric bike. Now our first test will be throttle only. I have our GPS speed here so we can check it with the display. Now I did change it to class 3 mode, but that still allows you to use the throttle up to 20 miles per hour. The only difference is if it's in class 2 mode, it'll top out at 20 miles per hour while you're pedaling. All right, here we go. Throttle only, 3, 2, 1. Pretty gentle start. And here we go. 6, 9, 11, 13, 14. And the display was reading 20, and I felt the motor kick off. It's reading 20.7 miles per hour, and the GPS reading slightly lower at 19 miles an hour, as expected. Now, of course, one of the main considerations of this bike is that it is Ride1Up's torque sensor commuter style electric bike. What does that mean? Well, as I pedal harder, I'm going to get more power out of the motor, as we'll see here in a second. Now, it is difficult to get this across on camera because, of course, it's going to depend on how much effort you're putting in. But what I will do is, in each pedal assist level, I'll pedal nice and easy, get into a comfortable cadence, see what the speed is, and then I will put a little bit more effort in. We'll see what the top speed is, putting in a little bit more effort. All right, I am in pedal assist level 1 and in first gear, and I felt the motor just a little bit kick on. Not much power it's reading, that we're using just 35 watts and pedaling at a very easy cadence. Of course, in first gear, I would maybe shift up into second, maybe even third gear, and we are just cruising along at 9 miles an hour. But of course, if I put in a little bit more power, still in third gear, we're getting up to 70 watts, 87 watts. And I would shift up to fourth gear here, and you can see we're already at 15 miles an hour and still not using that much power, shy of 100 watts. Let's slow down a little bit and go into pedal assist level 2. And now we're getting about 100 watts. It's bouncing around a little bit, 87 watts. Again, very leisurely cadence, fourth gear, cruising at 10 miles an hour, 11. And of course, just a little bit more power. It's a very natural riding experience. We're using 174 watts. I'm going to shift up to fifth gear here, and you can see we're getting close to 20 miles per hour already, 191 watts. And I wouldn't say I'm putting a ton of effort in, certainly more. All right, let's go into pedal assist level 3. Now, what I'm very curious about when I ride these torque sensor electric bikes is for people who maybe don't want to put in a ton of effort, but they still like the natural riding experience, but they still want to be able to travel at higher speeds and perhaps not put in a ton of effort. We'll see what happens in pedal assist level 5, but for now, 3, and I saw 174 watts or so, getting close to 200. That's of course the same wattage we were getting before in the lower pedal assist level when I was putting in more power. And now, right now, it's hovering around 100 watts or so and cruising at 16 miles an hour. And I know we're gonna get probably over 20 here. shift up into 6th gear. I would say this is a reasonable amount of effort, but not something I couldn't do for a long period of time, cruising at 21 miles an hour, getting up there around 300 watts. All right, now let's go into pedal assist level 4. As we experienced with the other older model limiteds, this torque sensor feels very similar. It's very responsive. Using about 150 or so watts in pedal assist level 4, getting up 300. It's bouncing around a little bit, cruising at 15 miles an hour, which is nice. If you wanted to go in a higher pedal assist level and still cruise, you can do it. Put in a little bit more here. Getting up over the 20 mile per hour mark. Ride1Up displays reading 22. And 441 watts is what I saw. Getting close to 500. All right, I wanted to go somewhere where I could be a little bit more respectful instead of the trail to see what the true top speed of this bike is. All right, pedal assist level 5. I'm seeing it already over 600 watts. That's kind of what it jumped to initially. I'm gonna shift up into 7th gear. Remember, 8 speeds. So 20 miles per hour, super easy, 21 even. Again, in class 3 mode, without breaking a sweat. There's 8th gear. Even getting close to 23 miles an hour, 22. So that's nice for folks who do want to travel at a higher speed. All right, let's see what this bike can do in pedal assist level 5. Putting a little bit more effort. 930 watts is what I'm seeing as the high wattage. There's 26. Display's reading 28. 27 on the GPS brake test. And those brakes had no problem getting me to a stop at the stop sign. We're gonna try that top speed once more. The GPS did top out at 28 miles per hour. Display reading 29. And there's 28. So definitely possible to travel at class 3 speeds. And again, just over 900 watts is what I'm seeing as the peak power. One thing briefly I wanted to talk about is the riding position. Again, swept-back handlebars. I'm in a very upright riding position. You can pay attention to the upcoming third-person riding footage to see how I fit. I feel a little bit like I'm towering over this electric bike. If I was going to be riding this a lot, I would probably extend the stem out, get an adjustable stem so I could bring those handlebars maybe a little bit further away from me. And just so you can see, as a 6-foot-tall rider, you can see how close my knees are actually coming to those handlebars. And not that they're going to come in contact with the handlebars. And of course I can get full leg extension. So I'm guessing the top 2 model, the XR, is going to fit me a little bit better than the step through, though I'm a huge fan of the swept-back handlebars. It's just such a comfortable riding position. All right, with that, let's get into some third-person riding footage. I'll give you my concluding thoughts on the all-new Ride1Up Limited. Even after nearly 4 years, the Ride1Up Limited continues to shine as one of the best value commuter e-bikes, with one key feature just not often seen at this price point: the torque sensor. That feature more than likely is the sole reason people buy the $1595 Limited over the Ride1Up 700 series, which actually offers a few benefits over the Limited but has a cadence sensor. And even a step down in price is the Turris at $1295. Basically, anyone considering a commuter e-bike should look at the Ride1Up lineup, and we've reviewed every single one. But back to the Limited. Besides the more natural experience of the motor amplifying your power, you get some nice things you often don't see. A SR Suntour suspension fork, which is a recognizable brand, the WTB Groove E tires, and a 8-speed Shimano drivetrain compared to the 7 speeds we typically see. Like all Ride1Up models with this color LCD, it's nice to be able to change the number of pedal assist levels, but more importantly, change how much motor power you get in each pedal assist level. Plus, the recent addition of being able to easily toggle between Class 2 and Class 3 mode is a nice touch. I'm not as familiar with the AKM motors Ride1Up is using on the new Limited. They say it's quieter, but I personally didn't notice any significant noise reduction. Power-wise, it's easy to hit around 20 miles per hour without much effort, though you will need to put in some effort to hit 28 miles per hour, not surprising on a torque sensor e-bike, and that motor is paired with an average size 14 amp hour battery, which I'm happy to see is UL 2271 certified. Stated range is between 30 and 50 miles, and I know that's possible since I was able to eke out over 50 miles putting in quite a bit of effort on the first gen Limited years ago. As far as other updates go, they are minor, but they now include those sturdy fenders and a rear light. Time for the key considerations. First off, assembly. There's no getting around that this e-bike takes more skill to assemble, the fork, crank, front hydraulic caliper, etc. Best bet is to contact your local bike shop to see if they will assemble it, unless you're an experienced bike tech. That of course is going to add to the cost of this e-bike. Next, while I really like that Ride1Up tends to offer swept-back handlebars on the ST or step-through and straight bars on the step-over or the XR, that step-through standover height is higher than many other step-through e-bikes at 23 inches. So more accessible certainly, but not ultra accessible. I'm sure they did this to help keep the frame nice and stiff. Also, as I mentioned, I'd personally make adjustments to the step-through to make it feel better for me as a taller rider, or simply just go with the high step. I'll add that I did like that the old Limited had a top load battery instead of the bottom load on the V2. And finally, something to be mindful of is just the lack of motor cutoffs on the hydraulic brake levers. This is typically a nice safety feature, especially for those new to e-bikes, and I feel like is particularly important on electric bikes with throttles. If you found our reviews helpful and have decided to buy an e-bike, I'd greatly appreciate it if you use our links down in the description, which is a free way for you to show us your support. Thanks in advance. I'm happy to recommend Ride1Up and the new Limited. 4 years since I first started covering e-bikes, they have grown the lineup significantly, and still the Limited holds a special spot for those looking for these specs. And the company has grown too, with a huge community of riders on Facebook, but more importantly, solid customer support from US agents who are knowledgeable in the e-bike space. If you already own a Ride1Up e-bike, I'd love to hear which one and your experience down in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.